Greetings, Tezos Nation. Welcome to another edition of TezTalks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons. Joining me today is Chris Catoya, co-founder and COO of DNS. DNS, for those who might not know, is the next generation music, video, and art social and creator platform bringing users together with their favorite artists and their work in powerful new ways. The DNS team is currently ramping up toward the hotly anticipated release of their revamped platform that promises to deliver the smoothest and most intuitive user and creator experience in the business. On today's stream, we'll be giving away a Tezos Commons exclusive sound emoji to one of our lucky viewers. If you'd like that lucky viewer to be you, keep an ear out for a keyword later on during the stream. And of course, if you have any questions for Chris that you'd like me to ask, please add them in the chat at any time and we'll get to as many as we can before we wrap up. Hi, Chris. How are things in San Francisco?
Hey, it's good to be here. They're great. Excited to be here and talk to you.
Right on. We're glad to have you. To get the ball rolling, can you tell us a bit about your professional background and how you got your start in the exciting world of blockchain technology?
Yeah, so I started doing startups straight out of school, and then actually found myself living in the Palo Alto hacker house for Ethereum back in 2015. And it was like featured on like TechCrunch Cribs and things like that. And I was interested in blockchain like since 2013 or so. Um, and my sort of like first like real job was in mobile gaming. I was a producer there. Ended up running 5 teams across sort of like the technical side, the art side, and games development on live game support and new IP.
Very
And then
cool.
from there, just sort of worked in fintech, worked in VR, med tech as well, and finally got us, working in blockchain with a company called Block Science, which does a lot of research and development for things like other Cosmos, Delphia. Worked on the basically the framework to test the Ethereum merge as well. So I've sort of like seen a lot of different projects and
Hmm.
been really excited to work in Tezos because it's honestly like the best tech in the space.
Very cool. So that journey, of course, has led you to becoming a co-founder and COO of DNS, as I mentioned. For those who might not know, what exactly is DNS and what's its place in the world of NFTs and digital art?
Yeah, so we're launching a social protocol built on Tezos, competing basically against Lens for Polygon, and it's just all based on everything's an NFT. So all your comments, likes, the people you follow, and the content you make are all NFTs. And we think that's really important to make sure that you have basically data portability and interoperability with like all the content you own, your social graph you own. We really think sort of social needs to move away from just talking about protocols all the time and talk about like the actual content. That's what people come to any sort of social network for. And We're excited about building it on Tezos because Tezos is, I think, where like the culture is for tinkering. You've got the hackers there, you've got the artists there, you've got creators just like trying every new possible thing under the sun. There's a lot of experimentation, and we think we owe that to just like the base technology itself. Gas fees are really low, so it's easy to just like try something, and it's not like a huge risk. I think right now we're seeing gas fees coming up again in the larger discourse, and that's I think driving more interest into Tezos. And on top of that, it's just easier to dev on, so people can try new things. And We realized, okay, if we're going to build a social network and content's like king, there's a really vibrant music scene that's really, I think, underserved across Web3 in general. And Tezos musicians just have the right vibe. They're focused on making art and connecting with their audiences. So we've been able to build relationships with a number of them, including people like Kenny Mayfield, Tao Zhao, Shark Anthony, and a number of others.
Okay. As I said off the top, DNS's new platform is a pretty ambitious project with a lot of facets, at least as I understand it. And we're sort of limited for time here. So I think if we just dive right in, that's probably the best approach here. And the first thing I'd like to ask is, why did your team take the decision to re-envision how DNS operates? What was it about the way people experience music and art and how creators and audiences connect in the digital age that you wanted to tap into?
Yeah, well, one of the things was in terms of building products that will like get high usage in Web3, it's the sort of usage patterns you've seen just in normal digital consumer spaces. It's people use their music app every day, um, and I think that's pretty important if you're going to instantiate something that is, you know, justify like why Web3. It's like, okay, we should use cases that like people use sort of regularly every day, multiple sessions per day. And sort of on top of that, it's the artists right now, I think just in general, outside of blockchain, are really underserved because there's a handful of platforms, some of them much friendlier to artists. SoundCloud, Bandcamp, I think, really serve indie artists pretty well. And then you look at sort of the streaming uh, world, and it just kind of breaks down. We could talk about the numbers. I don't think that's too terribly exciting, but I think more deeply, it's about how to empower the fans and the artists to like deepen the connection and
Mm,
focus it on the art that they're excited by.
okay.
I see
Um,
there was a question about our Twitter handle. You're gonna have to ask Shoku about that one, the CEO.
I was that's actually the next thing I was going to ask you was there seems to be a big focus on deepening that audience creator relationship sort of inherent in what you've built here.
Yeah.
Um, why did you feel like that should be a priority for your team and your platform?
Um, well, as I said, we were building relationships with artists in the space really early on. When the product vision was much smaller, and just the best way to build a product is to build relationships with your users and talk to them and listen to them, and then just sort of iterate over time and get feedback regularly and often and show things with warts and all, because you'll never know what you're going to hear, and to be surprised by the feedback is actually where you're going to do all the learning.
Mm,
um, and that's where we learned things like the way that people like Lawrence Fuller, they did sort of like claim quests almost, where it's just like, oh, you have to hold certain of my NFTs in order to get this new one, or burn some of them in order to get this other one. um, so things like that are really exciting and interesting to us, and we're not going to think of everything on our own. That's why you have to have that relationship with the people you're trying to build for.
mm.
It's really just mostly an exercise in empathy, and then anticipating people's needs.
Very cool. We have an audience queue that's just come through. Raymond would like to know, how is DNS planning for mass adoption when the biggest constraint for Web3 is how slow it is? YouTube is
Yeah,
instant while blockchain slows down.
yeah, that's a great question. So we have a whole like Minter flow, and what we've done is we've basically built a layer three roll up for dealing with um, the sort of um, the flow differences between like a Web 2 infrastructure and a Web 3 infrastructure. So we're able to do Web 2 speeds with like caching the content, but it's all getting pushed to IPFS. So the content will always like be available. And we're just ensuring that it is accessible at a like expected user experience level, irrespective of the underlying architecture underneath on the Web3 side.
Okay. So I heard you and your co-founder Shokunin speak at the Tezos NFT Summit in New York a few weeks ago. And I know you touched on this a little bit already, but you both seem to feel that there's some really pressing problems that need to be solved in the world of art, particularly in the music business. And I'm wondering
Yeah.
if you can talk a bit about the specific problems in this space that you wanted to solve with DNS.
Yeah. So one big one was basically the sort of streaming model caps revenue. So what you now have is everyone basically pays $10 either outright in a subscription for streaming or through the ad revenue uh, sort of side of things. And so everyone pays now $10 for music a month forever, right? Like that's their worldview. And if you were to go to a concert and you just happen to see like an opening band that was really cool, and you interact with them and you buy their merch and you buy the CD or the vinyl, you've now just spent more than that $10 a month,
Mhm.
right? And so what's happened is there's no way to, not no way, but it has become popular in the sort of streaming world to like not have any relationship with the artist, to not deepen it in any way, to not say like, hey, you know what? I want to be a VIP with you because I really like the art you're doing and I want to support you. I want to be a patron, right? Um, there's no product sense on the Spotify side for supporting any of that. And then it gets worse because as an artist on Spotify, you don't really get a sense of who your audience is. So there's no sense of like an insight there. There's no sense of like, hey, you know what? There's a bunch of people coming in from these other bands or these other genres listening to my thing, and what do they care about? Um, what are things that would excite them for even a live show or something like that? What are some exclusives I can give them? So I think those are a whole bunch of questions. And then the other thing we've seen in Tezo's music is the the tail of the content is much longer. So what I mean by that is, on streaming services, you get the finished product, and that's all you get, and it's a studio single or an album of that. On SoundCloud, that's sort of expanded a little bit with things like demo tapes, right? Um, but in NFTs, we have artists like Cannon Jones who are like battle rappers. That's how they describe themselves. That's how they market themselves. And so they're putting out battle raps on blockchain. That's really cool. That's a new kind of content that you don't really see anywhere else.
Mm.
And so you also see things like session tapes and things like that. So the tail of the kinds of content you'll see in blockchain is just much deeper, it's richer, it's more interesting, it's more interactive. I've even seen people say like, hey, it's my buddy's birthday coming up, can you make a song for them? So that's I think where it's a lot more interesting, a lot more interactive. You deepen that relationship.
For sure. Um, so as part of that, I understand there's also been a focus on adding a quote unquote social layer to the DNS user experience. What will the social aspect of DNS look like in practice?
Should I just show a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do
uh,
that now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Cool. All right, cool. So this is what the homepage will look like when it's live. Um, you've got a feed of items, um, and then let's look at Kane Mayfield's profile. So you can see the NFTs he's recently listed, things he's favorited, things he's added to various collections. We can even go over here and you get like sort of categorizations of the stuff that Kane owns. You can see who the creators that he's collected from. And then what I would like to show is content plays. So I don't know. I don't think the audio quality will be spectacular.
Of the population of the
But you
world.
can hear that we've got a player.
Yet you consume
Content plays.
64%
And so
of the
I can
drugs.
keep exploring while
Why
I'm
is it?
playing. I can even decide to play a different song. If I'm collecting items or buying them, they'll show up in my cart here. So
I'm a product of Reaganomics.
Just FYI, the music is drowning you out a bit.
Okay, cool. So pause. But I just proved music plays on our platform, and you can keep exploring. So we've got a marketplace as well. Yeah, and one thing we paid attention to was, all right, how does one mint? How should the experience feel like? So as you can see here,
Can I just ask about what we just looked at before we get into the minting?
Yeah.
So that page essentially that we're looking at, is that all? That's all set up by the creator, how they want it to look, where they want things to appear, that kind of thing, or does it automatically populate?
There's a template of a profile, and you can organize your work in your collections. But we try to sort of give as much as possible immediately from if you're signing in with a custom wallet that already has content, that content will show. If you're signing in with our social login flow, we're able to make a wallet for you with our smart wallet contracts. And we use Magic Link in order to handle the keys and all that. So it is a non-custodial wallet that we envision that is a really great way to onboard a lot of new users to Web3 in general. And as they sort of gain their bearings on what all the stuff is, and their friends are like, hey, you should use this other wallet. They can export the key if they want, and then keep going. But we think it's a really nice sort of onboarding experience. And so if you want to have multiple wallets as well, it's also a really nice way of managing them all from one contract that you own.
Very cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so you would have the artwork here. So we're organizing by content types as well. So collections is where you can organize that. And this is a bit of a timeline feed, the activity feed of the user you're looking at. And then if I go to home, that's sort of your timeline. So very sort of Instagram, the types of social people are already used to.
As the people you follow are posting things, your news feed refreshes. Okay.
Yeah.
And you were going to show us the minter?
Yeah. So it looks like every other time you upload something to a social site. And we enable sort of editing a number of editions. You can enable comments, disable them. And then for those a deeper settings that you might want to do that you normally do on minting, you can expand that and have it here. So you can deal with the titles. You can change the royalties. You can adjust royalty splits, add co-creators, tags, attributes, license, so on. So yeah, we really focused less on what is the tech available, and then do something with it, and much more of, okay, what should the experience look like? And then build tech in order to make that happen. So we built the smart contract wallets in order to make the user creation flow something that feels really seamless. We built the player so that just runs, your content will play. You're not going to have to ask this question of cool, I own this NFT now. How do I enjoy it? It's just seamless. Mm-hmm. And then the idea that the way you discover and you might want to buy NFTs should be a little bit, not just a marketplace. You don't want to showcase your NFT in eBay, right? In every marketplace. You want to kind of give it a nice profile. You want to give it a nice page, and then just let people if they want to support it, they can just claim it from there. So let's show what a claim flow looks like. So I'll just collect this one. Cool. All right. So now I own the NFT from beta.
Just like that.
Just like that. Right.
So now in theory, I could take that NFT that I've just got for free and add it to my playlist. And
you can add it to your playlist, but I'll build
my music experience that way.
Yeah, exactly. So you can build playlists as well. Yeah. So that's the sort of experience we were going for is something pretty seamless. Um,
It's very cool. Very
Thanks.
cool. Um, I know your team is currently in the process of building a wait list for the beta test of the new DNS platform that we just had a peek at. Um, what should those who participate in the beta test expect to see and experience?
What I showed. So the waitlist is available. So if you just go on DNS.xyz, you'll be added to the waitlist, and when the beta opens, um, you'll have access to the site I just showed. But in the meantime, we're giving away an NFT of the video teaser trailer, which features music by Alec Empire. We will be giving away um, uh, PFPs of our sound emojis. Which yeah, so in addition to everything we're already doing, yeah, we're doing a PFP project too on top of that. And the feedback on the sound emojis we've gotten is that they're like pretty charming and endearing, and that's very exciting to hear. And then also when you sign up for the beta list, you get to claim your username, which is a Tezos domain.
Okay. Um, so all awesome stuff so far. I'm excited to dive in a little bit deeper and learn more. But before we do that, obviously we have, speaking of sound emojis, a giveaway to do, and we need to do the world famous TezTalks lightning round. Are you ready to do all of that?
Let's do it.
Okay. Today's keyword for the Tezos Commons exclusive sound emoji we're giving away today is exclamation point DNS. Enter the keyword exclamation point DNS in the live stream chat, and Nightbot will randomly select today's winner, who will announce before the end of the stream. Okay, now, Chris, it is lightning round time. Remember, there are no wrong answers, and this is just for fun so our viewers can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Simpsons or Family Guy?
Simpsons.
Pizza or sushi?
Ooh, depends on the sushi. Probably Toro. Yeah.
Movies or video games?
Movies.
Is this real life or are we in a simulation?
Real life.
True or false? Money buys happiness.
False.
Name one thing you absolutely want to do before you die.
I want to just spend like 6 months on a grand tour traveling the world.
The last place you traveled was?
New York for and NFT NYC.
Me also. In 5 words or less, how would your best friend describe you?
Ooh, good question. Reliable, insightful, unflappable, succinct.
Beautiful. Finally, what is your favorite thing to do on a rainy day?
Curl up in bed with my girlfriend.
Excellent answer. This concludes the TezTalks lightning round. Let's get back into it. Um, as I mentioned, this really is a multifaceted project with a lot of angles to it. There's a couple of facets that I'd like to touch on with you. The first one being the current DNS tagline is where everyone is a creator. Can you
Yeah.
explain what that means? Like, as a collector or follower of an artist or musician on your platform, what would
Yeah.
I be creating exactly?
We think curation is going to be an incredibly important part of one sort of like community creation, but also discovery. So the fact that people are collecting, they're making playlists and things like that, they are a creator, right? They're curating content as well. So we think that's like an important part of it. And so we sort of see this path of mastery, right? Where someone comes in, they just want to listen and maybe collect some stuff. And then over time, they start like organizing playlists and sharing their tastes with their friends and other people, and maybe that builds them an audience. Um, and then maybe some of them, after sort of like playing around with the content a bit, they go, you know what, I can make this myself too. And so then they step up and they're making their own art as well. But I think there's, at every step, you are participating in the creation act.
Yeah, I've definitely, like, I'm a big Spotify user, and I've definitely seen there are some people who've created playlists that are sort of evolving, where they're constantly adding new songs, and some of them
Yeah.
have hundreds of thousands of followers, and I've wondered, like, what does that look like for the person who created that playlist? Are they getting anything out of that, or are they just doing it for fun? But I
I think
also,
it's
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's both. I mean, I've done playlists for parties that were like themed around absinthe, and so I did a whole playlist that was like on theme for that. And it's like really fun to just talk with people about, like, the choices one makes there. So I think it is a creative act, and people engage with it the same way.
You also mentioned a little bit earlier something that kind of caught my ear. You were talking about comments and things that people are doing, ways they're interacting with the work. You said that those are also NFTs. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. So on our social protocol, we built a layer three, and I think I saw a question fly by around this. A roll up. So all the likes and comments will get rolled up in order to just like be able to make it all free, gasless for our users, and just like effective on our end as well. But it all gets written to chain. Um, and we're really excited about the optimistic rollups coming onto Tezos as well, because like we are going to be like the first users of that, undoubtedly. And what we thought was important was that the data is owned by the users. Like their data is theirs, and it's got portability to it, right? Because if you know how to read what an NFT is, you can build apps on top of that data as well. So we don't have to manage API access and things like that, which I think is really about, we are creating a front end for all the content that a whole app ecosystem can explode from.
Okay. So if we're talking about um, a comment that I've made on
Yeah.
a piece of music that I've listened to, that, and we do see this where somebody posts a funny comment and it gets an enormous amount of engagement. So
Right.
so
Yeah.
that be
So
that go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, thanks for the tee up there. So one of the things we've seen is uh, you know, meme creation accounts, right? They'll make memes, or they'll like curate and aggregate a bunch of memes, and people sort of like follow that, and they're chasing attention at that point. Um, well, memes are sort of interesting to see the evolution of over time. So you want to sort of have like a DAG, if you will, or just like a provenance chain of like, all right, first it was this meme, and then it evolved into this thing, and then this other thing, and then this other thing. And you've got know your meme type websites that like try to do this, but if it's already like, it was a comment and it just happened to take off, and it was posted to chain before then you can tell, like, all right, who collected this, who interacted with this really early on, who was part of that cultural
Mm.
sort of like wellspring from the beginning. And then there's a lot of like interest in the cachet of that, and then people get to actually participate in the culture of the meme, and not just like um you know this thing flies around and we don't know where it's from, and it's just like in this ether sort of thing.
Mm.
uh, and from there, then there's a question of like, cool, people that are generating like significant cultural content, they can maybe get rewarded by it because someone wants to say like, hey, I support you as a creator, I'm going to be a patron and buy this meme, right? Like, and that's the value of the buying the meme, right? It's just saying like, I'm supporting this. So we think that's actually a really exciting and cool way to sort of change the way content and the people that interact with that content works.
Well, I think it's a really interesting aspect because obviously, some of these memes become extremely powerful and extremely influential over time as they're sort of
Yeah.
become mass adopted. So I'm very curious to see how that takes shape once we can track that evolution and
Yeah.
participate in NFT form with the different iterations of it, right? Um, the other thing you also touched on, but I wanted to get you to expand on it a bit also, is your team has developed a smart wallet as part of the DNS toolkit.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk a bit more about the DNS smart wallet and how it will sort of make life easier for those participating in the fledgling crypto and NFT economies?
Yeah, so the smart wallet is a smart contract. In fact, code crafting helped us work on it. And it's part of a trend of account abstraction. So the idea of account abstraction is that we move away from this notion of identity as wallet. Um, One way you could realize that it's a strange idea that people treat identities and wallets as the same thing is you wouldn't walk around with your bank statement and show everyone this is me. That would seem a little strange. So abstracting away from that and saying, "Hey, I am this person. There's actions you can that I might want to show people. I have the discretion to show who I am to other people and manage sort of like the line between public private is important. So if you have a smart contract um, that controls multiple wallets, then that's a way to sort of manage different facets. And so we've built a smart wallet contract and contracts that the users own, and they can control different wallets from that. And what's exciting is that we were the first to build this in Tezos. It's a conversation that I think like even Daniel Hines of Marigold has been like sort of putting out there for us, and like it was really great meeting him at NFT NYC actually for all that. And the cool thing was with the way we've done it is you can load in your Kukai wallet, any other like normal wallets that you already have, but then we've supported the ability to create wallets based on just like logging into a Web2 social that you have. So like Twitter, Discord, Apple, so on and so forth. And we see this as like kind of a nice way of onboarding users that are like new to blockchain, and also sort of like giving Web3 something much more of an equivalent to the way that like Facebook and Google have like log in with our accounts, and now you've got this like single sign on for all these other services, right? So um, smart wallet smart wallet contracts enable that ability to happen, and I think that's going to be extremely important to be able to supply developers with tools where it's just like cool, the login flow is now commodified. You don't have to worry about this stuff. You don't have to worry about the long tail of users that are like maybe new to blockchain to being able to like bring them on. So
Mm.
then that actually changes the products that like developers can focus on, right? Because I think right now you see a lot of the ecosystem is like really targeted to people that are like very blockchain native. And then there's the whole conversation of like, how do we bring on more users? Well, if you're only bringing products that are like for blockchain natives that are like pretty like mature in their understanding of the space, then you're not quite there.
It's very limiting.
So it's very limiting, and so I think that paired with Shok is pointing out again that Tezos tech is like way better to develop on. It's way easier, so you can iterate a lot faster. You can take more chances and experiment a lot more, and then like the gas costs are like virtually nothing. So people are already primed to try new things.
Okay. So there's obviously two sort of distinct groups of people who would be utilizing a platform like this, and those two groups being creators and users. Can you tell us what sets DNS apart from other NFT creator platforms and marketplaces already operating in the space?
Yeah, I think the social for one is a big aspect of that where it's okay, you can have following and commenting with each other and just like building a relationship based off of like, hey, I noticed you bought my thing. Thank you so much for that.
Mm,
Um, and then the person that bought it's like, yeah, it really slaps. Like the bass drop right here is really great. And cool. Now you have the beginning of maybe a friendship. Like that's super cool. And maybe the person that bought it is an artist themselves and they collaborate. That's actually the way that we linked up with Alec Empire of Atari Teenage Riot. Shoku's been a fan forever of them and introduced me to them, and they're awesome. And when they launched their PFP, he picked it up, and we were able to build a relationship with Alec from there on. And he thought what we were doing is super cool, and wanted to work with us on making the music for the trailer.
very cool. Obviously, at some point in your journey to realizing your vision for DNS, you made the decision to build it here in the Tezos ecosystem.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned a couple of aspects already, but can you talk a bit about what exactly attracted your team to Tezos and its ecosystem and community specifically?
Yeah. The the culture and the tech, right? So like the culture is actually really really important part of this too, where um, you know we didn't launch a token, um, which is pretty anomalous. And in hindsight, it might seem like a better idea than having done it. Sort of like hindsight 2020 sort of thing. And we made very specific decisions around not going that route, and I think that is very aligned with the Tezos culture and the users, and people recognize that. Um, People were focused on like what is a good experience, what is something I want to use, what is something I believe other people want to use. I want to tell people about like this cool thing because it just feels awesome. And like you see other products like that in the space, like FX Hash is awesome. A number of other projects as well. The sort of culture around NFTs and other chains, it's a lot more sort of not about experiencing the art. At times, it can be a little bit focused on the transactions,
Mm.
which is fine. It's important, but if you're trying to build a product, um, that might be a little misaligned. Um, so from the culture aspect there, I think that was like a deeply important and resonant with us. And that's where we were seeing the hackers in the space. Like a lot of the best devs that we just knew in general, like they were playing around in Tezos. They were building interesting things in Tezos and like trying it out. And why? Because Tezos enables that with like a way like cleaner, easier like dev experience than like dealing with something in Solidity. Like we've done projects before, like way earlier in Ethereum, and like lost 15F due to like a simple syntax error.
Mm.
So like, can you imagine trying to like code something and then like just like freaking out every time because you're like the possibility of like losing all your money is there? It's just like,
That's a lot of
and
pressure.
it's so much pressure. And I think there's technical decisions on the Ethereum side that I haven't seen justified in terms of like the unique value proposition for them. Of like, why do you need this aspect? And that adds a lot of technical craft and weight to something. And so it's like, okay, well, there's all this burden. And so like, yeah, there's the whole arguments of like, the floor price on things is like different and whatever, but like that's not what's driving us to like focus on developing a product.
So now that you've been in this ecosystem and in the Tesla space for a while as builders and creators, what has the response been like from the Tezos community and the people in it to your team and what you're building?
It's really nice to hear after like sort of like reworking and revamping this thing after basically a year on it. how excited people are. They're they'll make comparisons to all these other products that it's about like, oh, this thing works, like it really feels nice, it just works, I don't have to like play around with different things here and there, and like it's like, oh, it works kind of this way and then do that. It's just it's the thing I want to use. It's really nice. um, and it's sort of translating into this broader feeling of like, man, DNS, I can't wait to use it, to, man, DNS is on Tezos, this is really good for Tezos, which is like, oh wow, that this is like way bigger of a mantle than we were like anticipating. But like, that's awesome, right? Like that's it really is touching to hear that sort of feedback from our users.
Right on.
Yeah.
Um, we're sort of coming to the end here. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you. So your model, the model that DNS is sort of building out here, challenges the existing art and music marketing and selling paradigm and the vested interests operating within that paradigm. What roadblocks do you anticipate that those vested interests might be able to put in the way of a platform like this?
Sure. So the one that immediately comes to mind is like just not playing nice with contracts, which I think will blow up in their face. So I'm not particularly worried on that front. So sort of like they ignore you, then they laugh at you, and then you win, sort of flow there. Um, the I guess the others is sort of like access to artists, but that's like we've already seen like gatekeeping is kind of eroded away in many
Mm.
respects, and there's a lot of independent artists, and I think there's a number of highly successful, highly visible independent artists that are showing that like, hey, you can just do your own thing, build your own fan base, and you don't need to have millions of fans in order to make a good living off of art if you have a direct relationship with your
Hmm.
audience.
And I guess presumably the ones who maybe aren't really getting that much money off the existing
Yeah,
paradigm, that
yeah,
it really doesn't hold much leverage over them, right?
right. Yeah, 'cause I mean, like you look at streaming and the way that the rev share model on streaming works. It turns out that like if you live in California, for instance, you have to have 600,000 streams a month on Spotify in order to make a minimum wage. And of all the artists on Spotify, 0.5% of them make more than $1,000 a month.
Hmm.
So the skew is like, um, and the way that they do the counting can be all like kind of screwy, where um, you can have one song that's 90 seconds long, right? Play in the same span of something like Bohemian Rhapsody that's 6 minutes long, right? Four times in the same span of time. So what is the attribution? Should it be 4 to 1 or should it be 1 to 1? And right now they do the 4 to 1 thing. So like there's a lot of funny games that
Mm.
happen on the streaming side that um, actually affect the way that the art now is getting made, right? So we want to remove that. We think it should just be like, hey, if you're a real fan of this because they've made art that has moved you deeply in some real significant way, um, by all means, go whole hog. Like, be a super fan, right? Like, I think people being really into something in a deep way is much better for the art, right? And for the artists and for the audiences, rather than
Mm.
something that's kind of like ho hum and like, it just plays in the background and like no one really cares. But like, then that's the art landscape. Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah. I think maybe people underestimate um, the sort of the appetite for that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I know, for myself in my youth, going to punk shows, and like if I saw a band that I liked, I felt compelled to go to the merch booth and buy their CD and buy their shirt, and
Yeah.
show that I liked what I saw that way and support them, right?
Yeah. Well, I
And
think
it is a definitely an interesting gap in the current market that you're trying to
Yeah.
fill there?
Yeah. Well, I think it already exists with analog examples of like vinyl stores popping up, right? Like vinyl was proclaimed dead for like years and years and years, but now it's come back because there's this whole experience around it where you're talking with people. It's social, right? You go in there and they're like, "Hey, have you heard this thing?" It's not an algorithm telling you to like, "Hey, here you go." It's people sort of testing your taste and pushing them in ways that you would have never expected otherwise. And then there's all the extras that come with the album, with the liner notes, the art, and those things. And so that's what we're all encapsulating in the NFTs that we're working with artists on.
Right on. We could go on all day,
Me
but we
too.
are, as I said, coming to the end here. Before we close off, first off, I'd like to announce the winner of the Tezos Commons exclusive sound emoji we're giving away, and the winner is OEO. Congratulations, OEO. To claim your prize, just email us at social@tezoscommons.org. We'll request a screenshot for verification that you're the account owner and get your shiny new sound emoji over to you just as quick as we can. For those who missed out today, we remind you that there are awesome giveaways to be found frequently here on the TezTalks live stream, so keep tuning in. And as I understand it, many more sound emojis to be given away on the show here in the weeks to come. If you'd like to get in touch with us, our social media contacts can be found at tezoscommons.org/TezTalks. We'd love to hear from you. Chris, thanks so much for joining us today. It's always awesome to speak to the folks developing cool platforms like DNS here in the Tezos ecosystem and keeping Tezos at the forefront of the Web3 revolution. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention or touch on or plug before we sign off?
Just go to DNS.xyz if you haven't already. Claim your free drop and your free username. And hit us up on Twitter at DNS and join our Discord at discord.gg/collect. And we want to stay in touch with everyone and would love to hear from you all. Thank you so much.
Fabulous. To everyone out there in Tezos land, thanks for joining us on the TezTalks live stream. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons, and our awesome guest has been Chris Catoya, co-founder and COO of DNS. Now let's go
Thanks.
shift the paradigm.
Yes.